All right. So before we dive in or start off the demo, this is our online hardware store. As you can see, it's our designers worked overtime on this. It's really slick. Okay, it's not. It's a demo site, but this is sort of our representation of what you might go to an online retail site. If we go ahead and load this page, we'll see what kind of response we get. That was a little bit slow. That wasn't great. So you can see here all the network traffic, and I'll just mention, we'll come back to how to set this up towards the end. But this is right at the end there, you can see this is the transaction getting shipped back up to Sentry. So that's the package of information with all of the performance data about this page load. Let's switch over now to Sentry and see if we can see what's going on and maybe what's making that slow. So if I switch over, this is Sentry, which some of you will know and love. And this is the new performance homepage. So this is, you can see on the left nav how I get here. This is where I come for all my performance issues. So we saw that there was a slow page load. Let's see if we can get to the bottom of what's going on. Right here, I have my list of transactions. And that page load was the tool store page. So I can just dive into the tool store transaction. Right away here, I can get a summary and breakdown of what's going on with that transaction. So I can see kind of my duration breakdown. I can see individual examples and some of the slower transactions. I can also search. So let's zero in and say, let's say I want to know what's going on. I was in a Chrome browser, so I want to know what's going on with Chrome. So let's just say that browser name is Chrome, and we'll zero in on that. Now I can slice and get that specific experience and examples of different transactions that I can take a look at. So let's dive into one of those. Now we're here on the event details page, and I have an example transaction that I can see what's causing the issue. Up here in the mini map, I can kind of see the waterfall of all the activity that happened, all the different spans. I get a breakdown of where time was spent in different operations. I have my web vitals. We'll come back to those in a second, but I can see right away that my largest contentful paint is marked in red. So clearly there's an issue there I might want to look into. I also have my event tags and my breadcrumbs and all those other pieces. But just right away at the top of the page, looking at the mini map, we can see this long span that is taking up the bulk of the time for this transaction. So let's see if we can kind of zero in and see what's going on there. So I'm going to highlight just that section to see the start of that span. And here's that offending span right here. And it's this long transaction. Let's see what's going on. So it's actually an HTTP request happening in the backend, where I'm calling back out to one of my APIs to get some information loaded in the page. So this is the front end transaction, and the issue really in this case is in the backend. So what I need to do is kind of dive in. But because Sentry uses head-based tracing, when we've decided to capture the front-end transaction for you, assuming you're sampling, if you're sampling at 100%, you'll get everything. But typically you'll be sampling your transaction data. But if we make the decision to capture the transaction, then we will capture the transaction all the way through the platform for all of your instrumented applications. So in this case, I've instrumented my Flask backend, and I can connect directly into the span and see what's going on in the backend. So now I've drilled through to the backend application, and I can have a look what's going on here. And I can see again that there's a couple of long spans. There's some nesting going on, but I can very quickly get to, okay, it's this run query span that's taking forever. And it's running this select query from the tools table. So I can see exactly how long the query took. I can see how long that the query only took a fraction of the time. I know what's going on here because it's a demo app. We put a sleep in the call to make it artificially slow so that I could show all this to you. But right away now I know like which application it's the backend piece, where to go in that application. It's this run query command that's doing something suspicious before it runs this database query, and I can dive right in and fix that. So just as quickly as that, I've gone from capturing the transaction in my application through to understanding where the slowness is coming from and where I can focus in order to improve that performance. Let's go back to the homepage for a minute, and let's go back to our demo application. So let's suppose now that I want to buy some of these really nice Allen wrenches. I'll get a couple of those, yeah. And then we'll go ahead and check out. Again, a little bit of waiting, maybe not the most responsive, but let's give it a chance and see what happens. Oh, shoot, we had an error. Okay, so obviously my site needs some work, but we had a crash. So I can submit a bug report, but let's go ahead and close that. Let's dive back into Sentry and see what happened with that transaction. So again, I have the transaction being sent up to Sentry. That was the checkout page. So let's have a look at the checkout transaction here. Again, we're in the transaction summary view. Just to touch on a few other pieces here, I can see the AppDex score, which is miserable because we've made this artificially slow. We can see the user misery score, which is a slightly different view of performance, talking about the impact on users and how many are having a good versus a bad experience. I can see the throughput and the failure rate. I can see if there's any related issues. So if there's errors that are associated to this, I can see right away on the summary view what the connections are there, and I could dive into those from here. But let's go a level deeper first. So if I dive into one of these examples, right away at the top of the page, I can see, hey, there's an error associated with this transaction event. So not only do we capture the transaction, but in the same tool, we also captured the error. I can see the span here is highlighted in red. So I can click right in and it tells me right away, hey, an error occurred in this span. Let's see what's going on. So now I can go over into the event detail for the error, and I can see all of the information that you're used to seeing for errors. I can see the tag cloud, the breadcrumbs, the code trace sample, all that stuff. And again, just as quickly as that, I've gone from the transaction in my front end through to the error that was captured, and I can start to troubleshoot this issue. And of course, there can often be a connection, right? Maybe that page was slow because it resulted in an error. Maybe the error, happened because of a timeout, things like that. So, my next step here would be to solve this and then see if that improves my performance, and I can go back into the performance homepage to see if that's the case.